It started with a memory sunlight dancing on the water, my daughter's laughter echoing off the vinyl siding, the scent of sunscreen and fresh lemonade. That pool wasn't just a pool. It was ours. It was where my late husband Daniel taught her how to float on her back and whispered silly stories about fish that tickled your toes if you stayed too still. That water had held not just splashes and chlorine but moments. So why did I tear it down? Grief. That kind of grief that seeps into your bones and stays like a bitter wind. The pool sat still for 2 summers after Daniel passed. No more barbecues, no more Marco Polo, just a hollow algae green sadness staring back at me every morning. I thought maybe if I removed it, I could breathe again, but I never imagined grief would be the least of my worries. It was a cloudy Tuesday when the demolition crew came. Just 3 guys, 1 backhoe, and an old dump truck. They were respectful, asking twice if I was sure. I was sure. The pool came down in 4 hours. By sundown, all that was left was a flattened dirt circle and a few memories scattered like dust. And then came the knock. Not even 20 minutes after the crew left. Knock, knock, knocked. Not polite, not neighborly. This was the knock you feel in your spine. I opened the door to find HOA Karen. That's not her real name, of course. But if you've ever had a neighbor with a clipboard, pursed lips, and a complaint about the color of your mailbox, you'll understand why that's what we all called her. You can't just do that, she said, stepping over my threshold uninvited. That pool was community aesthetic. It was part of the neighborhood's charm. I blinked. It was mine. Karen huffed like she'd sucked in a lemon. It doesn't matter. You've altered the appearance of your property. I'm reporting you to the HOA in the city. There's no HOA on this street, I said. And I didn't need a permit to remove something I installed. Don't be so sure, she snapped. You've disrupted property value. I should have shut the door then, but I didn't. I stood there, grief still raw, heart hollow, and for a second, just a second, I let her words in. What if she was right? What if I'd made everything worse? But what followed? Nothing could have prepared me for it. The next morning, there were 3 squad cars outside my house. Not 1, 3. I opened the door, expecting to clarify a mistake. Instead, I was met with a stern-faced officer asking if I had willingly tampered with the community structure. They were. Treating me like I'd taken a wrecking ball to a playground, I tried to explain. It was my pool, on my land. The younger officer lowered his voice. Ma'am, you're being accused of removing a shared amenity. That's when I saw her. Karen standing at the edge of the lawn, arms folded, watching like a hawk. A shared amenity? My backyard pool? I laughed. I couldn't help it. Burst out of me like a balloon popping, sharp and sudden. Do you think I took down the neighborhood pool? The officer didn't laugh. We'll need to verify property lines. He left after an hour, but not before making me feel like I was seconds away from being arrested for emotional vandalism. Let me take you back. 2 years ago, when Daniel was still here, Karen came to one of our barbecues. I'd invited her out of kindness. She sat stiffly in a lawn chair, sipping white wine and glaring at children who dared to laugh too loud. Daniel whispered to me, I think Karen was born without joy, elbowed him, and told him to behave. Back then, I never thought she'd be the reason I'd feel unsafe in my own home. That evening, I got a city code enforcement notice taped to my door. It said I had to appear for an informal hearing about the destruction of regulated structures. No hearing date, just a number to call. I felt like I was in a dream where the world doesn't make sense. It's a nightmare. When I called the number, the man on the other end sounded bored. Oh yeah, the pool thing, we've gotten a few calls. Few. Yeah, he said. Apparently, someone's been pretty vocal. Karen had launched a campaign. She'd gotten neighbors involved. She even claimed the pool had historical significance. Historical. We installed it in 2015. For the first time since Daniel passed, I felt something stronger than grief, anger, but also determination. I decided I wouldn't just sit back, so I went to the county office and pulled the deed, lot lines, photos, permits, everything. I even found the original receipt for the pool install. I walked out of that office with a folder in my hands and a fire in my chest. And yet, the harassment didn't stop. The next morning, I found spray paint on my fence. In bright red letters, "Pool Killer." The camera on my porch had caught it. Teenagers. Probably paid in pizza by Karen. I reported it. Police shrugged. I replaced the fence boards myself. That night, I sat in my yard. Just me and the flattened dirt where the pool used to be. I stared at the stars and felt Daniel beside me, quiet and strong. And I said out loud, "I'm not giving up." "You didn't raise me to fold." The next day, I attended the hearing. I was the only one in jeans. Karen came in like she was attending a royal wedding, clipboard in hand. Thick file bulging with what I assumed were pictures and signatures. Spoke first. "This woman has taken away a neighborhood treasure. Her actions are selfish, destructive, and a violation of community spirit." Then it was my turn. I stood there, palms sweaty, heart racing. I held up my folder. This pool was mine. My husband and I saved for it. We built it with our hands and our hope. When he died, it stopped being joy. It became a wound, and I needed to heal. I didn't destroy anything. I reclaimed my peace. For once, Karen was silent. The board took a break. When they returned, told her plainly, "This is a private residence." The pool was not communal. No violations occurred. Karen's face turned a shade of red I didn't know existed. But I didn't smile, because the battle might have been won, but the war wasn't. Over 2 nights later, someone left broken glass scattered across my driveway, and a note, "We're not done." That's when I got cameras, floodlights. I started documenting everything. I posted my story online. Not for pity, but because silence protects bullies. The post went viral. People from around the country sent messages. Some shared similar experiences. Others sent support. One woman even said, "You reminded me that standing up for yourself is worth it." It was the first time in a long while that I didn't feel alone. Karen tried to sue me for defamation after the post. Thrown out, but the most unexpected thing happened next. One morning, I found a small box on my porch. No name, no note. Inside was a keychain, tiny floaty with "Let Joy" in engraved. And that's when I finally cried. Not out of fear, not out of grief, but relief, you see. This story wasn't about a pool. Not really, it was about memory, about it. Grief. About standing your ground when the world wants you to shrink. And it's far from over, because while I took down my pool, what I rebuilt was far stronger. Please don't scroll away. You're still here, you've walked this with me. And maybe, just maybe, you faced your own version of Karen. Maybe you've let people make you question what belongs to you, what joy you're allowed to keep or let go of. So stay with me. There's more. This isn't just about my yard or a nosy neighbor. It's about finding the courage to reclaim your space. Watch till the end, because the next twist, even I didn't see it coming. The funny thing about stories like mine is that people always think they end. When the noise dies down, they don't. The noise just changes pitch. A week after the viral post, my inbox overflowed. Not all support. Some messages were cold, biting. "You wanted attention?" One read. Another. Typical widow drama. I didn't even know who these people were, but Karen. I had a feeling she did. It's easy to ignore online hate until it crawls offline. That Saturday morning, a man showed up on my porch. No uniform, no name tag. Just a khaki vest, sunglasses, and a camera slung across his chest like a weapon. He said he was from a property standards task force, claiming he had a few questions about urban disruption. I asked for credentials. He smirked and said, "Don't worry, this is just a community-led initiative." Karen. She'd send someone. I closed the door in his face. But this time, instead of crying, I laughed. It was the laugh of someone pushed. Too far, too often. The laugh of someone who's tired of surviving and ready to fight back. The next day, I mowed the lawn. Planted flowers where the pool used to be. Sunflowers. Daniel loved sunflowers, said they reminded him of golden possibilities. And then I got the idea. If they wanted to paint me as the neighborhood villain, maybe I'd embrace it. I filed for a permit to build a greenhouse, a big one, right in the middle of the yard, where the pool had been. The clerk at City Hall raised an eyebrow.
That's a large structure.
I have a lot of healing to grow, I said. Within a week, the frame went up. Metal arches, polycarbonate panels. Every day I worked with my gloves on, dirt under my nails, music in my ears. It wasn't a pool, but it was life, and I was ready to tend to it. Karen didn't knock this time. She called. I didn't answer, so. She stood outside my fence, yelling, "What are you building now? A farmer's market?" I waved without turning around. The sunflowers swayed beside me like backup dancers. 3 days later, a Sandesis letter came in the mail. Signed not by the city, but by the Neighborhood Beautification Committee, which didn't exist till Karen made it up. I posted the letter online. The internet exploded again. This time it came with a gift. A lawyer named Elise messaged me. She said, "I deal with HOA abuse cases all the time. I'd love to help. You pro bono? These people are predators." I hadn't expected that. Not the offer, not the kindness. For once, I let someone help. We didn't sue. We investigated. Elise found out something I never imagined. Karen wasn't just a busybody. She wasn't just power-hungry. She was profiting. Her husband owned a property management company. Every house sold on our street had a clause that recommended his services for upkeep. Karen had created a fake committee to protect values, which conveniently pressured homeowners to use her husband's services. My pool. My removal? A threat to her ecosystem? She didn't want to save the neighborhood. She wanted to control it, so I went public. Again, not with rage, with receipts, emails, letters, the fake Sandicist. A voice memo one of the teen vandals anonymously sent me, Karen telling him she thinks she can just erase what's hers. Show her what erasure feels like. The video gained 1 million views. I got interview requests. Local news. One even wanted to make a documentary about neighborhood harassment. Declined most. I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. But Karen. She wanted war. One morning, I woke up and the greenhouse was gone, demolished, flattened overnight. A neighbor's camera caught a truck pulling in at 2A.M. License plate, no warning, just silence. Broken glass and destruction. The police said it was suspicious, but unprovable. I stood in the rubble, heart beating like a drum. Tears hot and angry, and I realized something. I'd spent months fighting back, but what I needed to do now was rise. Karen didn't expect that. She didn't expect the GoFundMe page someone created to rebuild the greenhouse. It raised $47,000 in 3 days. She didn't expect the volunteers. Strangers from my city. Old friends I hadn't seen since college. Veterans who served with Daniel. They all came, with hammers, with stories, with casseroles and music and lawn chairs. We rebuilt the greenhouse in 2 weeks. Bigger, brighter, stronger, we called it. The Phoenix Garden. And when the grand opening happened, Karen stood at the edge of her lawn, arms crossed, lips trembling. She didn't say a word, because she'd already lost everything that mattered to her control. But the moment that truly broke me, it was a little girl, maybe 6 years old. She walked into the greenhouse with her mom, looked up at the hanging vines and whispered, "This place feels like magic." That was when I felt Daniel, in the warmth, in the green, in the laughter that no longer sounded foreign. I'm the since I It was about how we reclaim peace in a world that tries to bury it. You're still watching, and that means something. Maybe you've been through something like this. Maybe someone tried to make you small, tried to make you regret growing beyond your pain, but hear me, you have every right to rebuild. In your time, your way, stay with me till the end, because what happened next, even the police didn't see it coming. The day the greenhouse was finished, I thought that would be the end. But stories like this never wrap up when we think they should. They echo that weekend. The Phoenix Garden opened fully. I didn't expect a crowd. I thought maybe a few folks would wander through, see the blooms, and head home. Instead, I saw cars lining the street. People brought their kids, their grandparents, brought signs that read, "Let her grow and reclaim joy." A local musician offered to play. For free, someone brought lemonade, the kind Daniel used to make. With mint, I stood in the back corner next to a jasmine vine that hadn't bloomed yet, trying to take it all in. And that's when Officer Velez found me. He was one of the original cops who'd shown up when Karen first made that absurd complaint. About the pool? He looked sheepish now, hands in his pockets. "I wanted to apologize," he said quietly. "We got played. You didn't deserve that." I nodded. "Thank you." "I know." Then he pulled out his phone and showed me something I wasn't expecting. Security footage, not mine. From across town, a U-Haul. Same make, same model. Same missing plate as the one that destroyed the greenhouse. Anonymous tip. He said the vehicle was rented under a fake name, but the footage catches someone climbing out of the passenger seat. Recognize her? Even in grainy black and white, there was no mistaking that posture, that signature bun. That stiff-necked stride Karen, she hadn't just orchestrated everything. She did it herself. I don't remember what I said, just the heat crawling up my spine. I asked, "Are you arresting her?" He hesitated. "We're building a case. Not just about the destruction now, it's about fraud, harassment, possibly bribing minors to commit vandalism." And then he added, "We've spoken to a few other neighbors. You're not the only one. Of course, I would control doesn't stop at one target. It spreads. Quietly. Like mold, Karen had been manipulating people for years. She'd driven one family out entirely, complaining about inappropriate Halloween decorations. Another had their backyard swing set removed by accident after Karen filed a bogus safety complaint. And yet, she still walked free. She still lived 3 houses down. I told myself to let it go, let the law handle it. But then came the letter, delivered by hand, left in my mailbox with no postage. The note was typed, unsigned. "You should have stayed quiet. Keep pushing, and it won't just be your garden." That was it. No name, no threat. But the chill in those words wrapped around me like a vice. I installed more cameras, motion lights, reinforced the greenhouse windows, but fear still crept in. Every time a car slowed in front of my house, I froze. Every time I heard a bump in the night, my heart thundered in my ears. I tried to stay strong, tried to be the woman who smiled in the newspaper photo. Beneath the headline, "Widow turns grief into growth," but strength doesn't mean you stop hurting. One night, I was in the greenhouse pruning a stubborn patch of sage when I heard it. A snap. Not glass. A photo. I turned just in time to see a flash, a camera, from the bushes, and then footsteps running. I didn't chase. I walked inside, locked every door, and sat at the kitchen table shaking. What was this now? A game? A dare? A trophy hunt for someone who wouldn't back down. The next day, the footage was gone. Camera logs erased. As a server reset. They had gotten smarter that morning. I broke. I called Elise the lawyer. "I need help," I told her. "Not just legally, emotionally, I'm not okay." And she said something I'll never forget. "You don't have to be okay to keep going. You just have to know what you're worth. And you, my dear, are worth peace." That night, I drove to Daniel's grave. I hadn't been in months. I sat cross-legged on the grass beside his name and whispered everything. The pool, the threats, the garden, the fear. And then I said, "I think she's trying to erase me." The wind rustled through the trees. It's a slow hush. And I remembered the first time Daniel ever saw the empty yard. "Before the pool," he'd said, "this place has room to grow something that lasts." He wasn't talking about a pool or a greenhouse. He was talking about me. So, I did something bold. I held a neighborhood meeting. Not for complaints, for connection. I printed flyers, passed them door to door. Rented the local library's meeting. Karen didn't show, but over 40 neighbors did. 40 faces. Most of whom I'd never had a real conversation with. We went around the room. Everyone shared something. A frustration, a joy, a memory, and then I shared mine. Not the drama, not the threats. I shared the story of how Daniel taught our daughter to float, how the pool had once been laughter, and how for a time, silence felt. Safer? When I finished, there wasn't a dry eye. Not because my story was special, but because everyone realized this wasn't just my story, it was theirs. We all have a Karen in our lives. A force that tries to shrink us. And we all need a place to grow something back after that night. Everything changed. Neighbors started walking together. Coffee groups formed. Kids played kickball in yards that had once been quiet from fear, and Karen, her power didn't vanish. It cracked, like a frozen lake in spring. First, her husband's property company lost contracts. The neighborhood quietly voted to remove any clauses in new sales that tied homeowners to his services. Then, former city clerk came forward. Someone Karen had pressured to falsify a permit report years ago. Elise took the statements, built a case. And then came the court date. Not mine. Karen's trespassing. Destruction of private property. Harassment. False claims to law enforcement. Didn't attend to watch her fall. I attended to stand. I sat in the second row. Quiet. Strong when the judge handed down community service, fines, and a restraining order. Karen didn't look at me, but for once, I didn't need her to, because this story was never about her. It was about reclaiming the space she tried to take, and I had done that, if you've stayed this far. I want you to know something. You're not powerless. You're not crazy for feeling broken. You're not alone. Your peace, your healing, your story, it matters. Watch till the end, because this next part, it's not about revenge. It's about what I built next, who finally came back home. 2 weeks after Karen's sentencing, I stood under the vines of the Phoenix Garden alone. The air smelled of basil and orange blossoms, the kind of scent that makes you stop and breathe without meaning to. The sun filtered through the greenhouse, roof and beams that made everything look like gold. I had survived the worst of it. The threats, the isolation, the vandalism, the lies. But it still didn't feel over. There was one last piece of the story. It hadn't come home. My daughter, her name is Lila. She's 19 now, college freshman. Majoring in environmental science, Daniel would have been so proud. She moved away a year after he died. Said she couldn't sleep in the house where she used to hear his voice echo from the backyard. We stayed in touch. Phone calls, texts, the occasional birthday Zoom. But she hadn't been back. Not once. Not even when the garden was finished. And I hadn't pushed it because grief demands space. But that morning I found a voicemail. Mom, I saw the news about the greenhouse, the trial, everything, I think. I'm ready to come home. It played over and over in my mind like a favorite song, and then I heard it. Gravel crunching, a door opening. I turned, and there she was. Brown hair longer now. Shoulders straighter, but eyes still wide, like the day she jumped into that pool for. The first time, neither of us spoke at first. She walked into the greenhouse, slowly, like it might disappear. If she moved too fast, then she whispered, "It still smells like him." I nodded, throat tight. I planted the things he loved. Lemongrass, mint, jasmine. She walked down the path, ran her fingers along the vines, paused at the sunflowers, and then she turned. Why did you take it down? The question I knew would come. It's the one I wasn't. Sure, I'd know how to answer. I couldn't stand to see it empty, I said quietly. It felt like he was still there. And not. She nodded slowly. Tears filled her eyes. I hated you for it.
At first, it felt like you were erasing him. I thought maybe I was too, I whispered. But I see now. I was making room to hold him differently. She stepped forward.
wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in years, I felt whole that night. We sat by the edge of the garden where the pool used to be. She pulled out a wrinkled photo from her wallet, her and Daniel in the water, faces dripping, arms around each other, both mid-laugh. "I kept it," she said. "Even when I didn't talk to you, I kept it." I smiled. "That was the day he let you jump in with your clothes on." She laughed. "Yeah, you were furious." We sat in silence for a while, and then she asked, "Do you miss it?" "The pool?" I said, "No, not anymore." She glanced back at the greenhouse glowing in the moonlight. "He'd love what you built." I looked at her. "We built it." The days after, that felt like breath again. The community changed too. Without Karen's shadow looming, people became lighter. Fences were repainted. Yards were opened up. Kids played basketball in driveways again. People stopped crossing the street to avoid each other. And something unexpected happened. Karen moved. No press, no announcement. A U-Haul came one morning, and by evening, she was gone. A neighbor said her husband filed for divorce. I didn't feel triumphant, just released sometimes. Freedom doesn't come with a bang. It comes with silence. Peace isn't loud. 1 month later, the mayor of our small town invited me to speak at a community forum. I almost said no. I'm not a speaker. I'm a gardener. A mother. A widow who just wanted to grieve in her own way. But then I remembered the messages I'd received. One from a woman in Texas. "Your story gave me the courage to leave a toxic neighborhood." Another from a teen in Oregon. "I thought I was alone. I'm not anymore." So I said yes. And I stood on a little stage in a library room and told my story. Not the Karen. Parts. The rebuilding parts. The reclaiming. The rediscovering who I was. When the world tried to strip me down, after the talk, an older man came up to me. He was quiet for a while, and he said, "I lost my wife 2 years ago. I haven't touched her rose garden. It's weeds now. Didn't want to kill the last thing she loved." I reached out and gently touched his arm. Maybe it's time to plant something new, not to replace her, but to sit beside her memory. Day smiled. "I think you're right." The news articles eventually stopped. The interviews ended. But the story kept moving. Lila started helping me in the garden. She decided to build a rainwater collection system as part of her college project. She wants to turn the Phoenix Garden into a model for sustainable grieving spaces. I didn't even know that was a thing, but now it is. Because of her, because of us, and now I want to talk to Yutha, one still watching. Maybe you clicked on this video expecting a wild neighbor's story, a petty feud, a viral drama, but what you got was something else. A story about how easy it is to lose yourself when you're already drowning. It's a story about how the people who shout the loudest don't always have the truth. A story about how grief is not a sign of weakness. It's a reminder of love. And maybe right now you're holding on to something that no longer serves you. A memory, space, a fear. Maybe you've been told your healing is inconvenient, that your peace is disruptive. To that I say, take down your pool, whatever that means to you. Clear the space. Let the earth breathe. And when the Karens of your world show up with their rules, and their rage and their fear of your light smile, because they don't get to decide. What you build in your own garden, you do. And maybe, just maybe, what you grow next will change. More than just your yard, it'll change you. Being here, please share this story if it meant something to you. Someone out there is still afraid to reclaim their peace. You can be the voice that reminds them it's possible. Watch till the end, they said. You did. Now go make something grow.